Well, what a week it's been to be an Eagles fan. Ness family, Drew Jones. It was just such a fun Sunday night, wherever you're watching from. One of our best wins in the last 2.5 years, maybe more. And all the hype that has followed through Harleymania and the rest. We're walking on air at the moment, aren't we, Drewy?
Well, it's bloody awesome. I remember Sunday night. We haven't had too many times in recent years where we're jumping off the couch, and we had multiple moments thanks to Harley, but also just the entirety of the team performance against Melbourne. An unexpected win. I had a multi which included Melbourne winning, and after the first 5 minutes I cashed out, which proved to be a great decision, and reiterated my faith in the side. But yeah, it was. I was almost a little bit emotional, to be honest, and even thinking back to it now, just we've said it a few times, but it feels like we've got our footy club back, and to be able to especially hang your hat on fortress that we're building at Optus Stadium again, and to see the crowd loud and enjoying the game, from a distance, it meant a lot to me, and I think it was one of our best wins since the flag. When you put in all the context and caveats, yes. Where do you think you rank it in the last sort of 5 years or so?
Yeah, I mean, the measuring stick for me is always that Richmond win of a few years ago when we came back late. The crowd was pumping. I mean, that was a stirring performance. It's hard to see a better one between that Richmond victory and now, considering where we've been, where Melbourne are rated. And also it's not so much the pure result, it's the manner in which we achieved it. And let's be honest, just the Harley moments. I mean, these are all-time West Coast Eagles moments. These are just stuff, it's kind of like Juddy's 5 goals against Brisbane that people still talk about 20-odd years later, 5 goals and a half. This is up there with that. Harley's 2 goals, but the way in which he kicks the first, the second, which gets overlooked because of the brilliance of the first, is also out of this world for a 9-gamer to make a defender look like a statue and kick another big major one out inside 50. And his general game, the fend-offs and the rest, that's a huge part of it, because it's an all-time West Coast Eagles moment, as I said, and it sits up there with some of our most joyful, and the most joyful in the history of the AFL in recent times, when you consider that he's a 9-game player and he's doing things in a first season that we just haven't seen before. We've seen, I wrote this on Twitter the other night, we've seen players have incredible first seasons. We saw it with Judd, Nick Dacos, of course. There have been others, but no one's doing it in this way. No one's doing it out of the middle, on the ball in a team that's struggling, and then in the goal square as well when he rests. That's just unprecedented. So that's a huge reason why it's one of the great ones for us, and we'll probably touch on that a little bit more. But we should probably mention, before we delve back into Harley and some of the other big talking points out of the game, some of the other contributors. For me, there wasn't anyone who played poorly, but it's the 3 experienced guys I think stood up and made a big difference in this game. I mean, Dom Sheed was solid. He wasn't brilliant. He could only improve after his Collingwood game. Simmo kept him in, stuck with him, and he delivered. He played nicely. But Jack Darling and Liam Ryan up forward were fantastic. I mean, Jack Darling's really stepped up in the last 4 to 6 weeks. And Flyan, we had to keep him in the team. I think he got some confidence from the last quarter against Collingwood, and he was excellent from the first minute. I mean, that first play, we win it at half-back, Harley to TK, Jake takes a big grab, and then he spots up Liam Ryan at half-forward. I don't know about you, when I saw that, I thought, all right, we're on today. Yeah, this is a really good sign early on. Liam out leading at half-forward. He's in the game now, and he played really well for 4 quarters. So those 3 experienced guys, I think, are the ones who deserve the credit, outside of Harley and Tim Kelly and Duggo and Jake, of course, who were fantastic.
Well, that's why I cashed out. I was like, we're on. And we're moving the ball well. We're winning contests. A lot of the stuff that we talked about that we hadn't really been doing the last few weeks, or the last couple of weeks, immediately it looked like we were a different side on Sunday. And Melbourne had conceded 100 points only 4 times in the last 5 seasons or something. Like there's some stat about how good defensively they are, and we were able to pick them apart and all over the ground and then deliver up forward. So I thought it was just such an impressive and mature performance. We had a plan. So Sheed, a close checking role on Clayton Oliver, which I thought was really clever, and it gave Sheed, a role. And he had a bit more direction, a bit more purpose in his game. There was a concerted effort to sort of stymie Max Gawn through the game, particularly when he was trying to get to throw-ins and stoppages, just chip away at him and not allow him to be, the really dominant ruckman that he has been, against every ruck in the competition, but, particularly against Bailey in recent times. So I thought that was a well-executed plan. And then, I agree, senior players were excellent. I thought Ruben Jimmy played his best game of the season.
Yeah.
Which was really promising. Saw some moments from him. Jack Darling looks like a new player, and I wonder if it's like with Yo and Harley in the midfield. Kelly looks like sometimes he gets a bit of a new lease on life. Like, is it Jake Waterman playing such great footy that's sort of freeing up Jack to play a bit better? He certainly looks fitter. He looks bouncier. When Tex Walker sort of bounced back from nowhere, it looked like Tex was done. And then he's, in the last few years, he's become an All-Australian. Like maybe, I'm not saying to that level, but we might get a little bounce out of Jack, just his body gets right and then some good players around him. Maybe that helps him out. So many positives to take out of the game. And when Melbourne looked like they were going to challenge to to drag us back in and make it a real fist fight, we always found an answer. And sometimes that was Harley, but, just in general, we were able to stave off an experienced team, which we think is going to be there when the whips are cracking.
Well, it helps when you've got a superstar key forward in Jake Waterman. Like, just kick it to him and he's, at the very least, creating a big contest, like 3/4 winning it. And more often than not at the moment, he's clunking them. So it gives you an outlet straight away to get back into the game. Makes such a difference. Defence we've spoken about is really strong. I mean, they all played well. Roth had a couple of moments.
We had a Roth moment, yeah.
He had a couple of Roth moments and, that would have been disappointing. But he's not going to get dropped. Like, he's part of this back seven right now that is a unit. Alex Witherden, fantastic again.
Yeah.
Geez, he's playing well at the moment.
He's become an actual defender.
He's tough at the moment and he's clean. You get to see the confidence oozing through him. So Roth's part of that group. You're not going to mess with that now. Like, they're in sync. He just had a couple of mistakes, but that's all right. That happens. And Jack, it's interesting. I mean, he did a really good interview on Channel 10 recently, which I hope people got to watch, because it just showed his, what's the best way of describing it? I mean,
he showed his softer side.
Softer side. He's a bit of a fragile character, Jack. Let's be honest. Like, he's a brute on the field. But I think off the field, he's a little bit unsure of himself. He's a bit shy, lacks confidence in front of the camera. I mean, he's our second highest goal kicker. We don't hear him speak much. That's not his go. And he opened up about, the issues relating to that COVID time and how horrible it was and the doubts over his future. And he just wants to play for the Eagles for as long as he can. Like, he just loves it. And I really admired his honesty there. And it was great to see that side of him. And as we've said a couple of times, when Oscar comes back and Matt Flynn comes back, there's a real selection squeeze up forward. I mean, you can't play Oscar, Jake, Bailey Williams, who will be the resting forward, Jack Darling, Ryan Marrick and Jack Williams in the same team. Like, two of them have got to go out. Jack Williams probably has a rest when Flynn comes back and Bailey plays second ruck forward. But I don't see how Marrick, Darling, Allen and Waterman can play in the same team. So maybe that's led Jack to fire up as well. And that's going to be an interesting call for Simmo. I mean, injuries can crop up. We know that. But that's going to be a really interesting one, but a good problem to have.
Yeah, and look, it does take a bit of the pressure off getting Oscar back. Like, if the knee's not right, you don't have to rush him back ahead of time, or if he needs to have a week off here and there. And obviously, Darling in the same boat to keep him fresh. And Williams can play, as in Jack Williams could play tall back as well. So there's plenty of flexibility, So we've got lots of options, which is nice. And there's no doubt, like, Jack would be looking ahead and saying, okay, there is actually a selection squeeze here. I need to pull my finger out. I'm sure that's one factor amongst many that we've seen that uptick in form. 12 tackles he laid. Like that was the old Jack Darling that we used to see towards the start of his career. So much to like. I just wanted to touch on something you were saying about Harley before. If we were doing a West Coast Eagles, entirety of history hype video, there's a bunch of stuff that like Reed's already in, like for some of the things that he's done, and he's played 9 games. Like, you got Peter Matera running on the wing, kicking a goal. You've got Luke Shuey after the siren. You've got John Sheed, a couple of moments from 06. Now there's this hype video, and then there's Reed palming off 2 of the best midfielders in modern times and then running away from Petrarca and kicking a goal from 50 and the crowd going absolutely nuts. Like that, and you actually can't compare him to anyone because he's got elements of all the best players in the competition. But you can't say, oh, he's the next Dusty, because he's doing things that Dustin Martin couldn't do. You can't say he's the next Petrarca because he's doing things that Petrarca couldn't do. Like Petrarca played as a forward pocket for about 5 years. People forget that, but maybe longer. Yeah. Dustin Martin had no tank, couldn't play in the midfield, was just playing as a half forward or a forward pocket, and then became Dusty. Reed's doing it straight away, and Judd was a wing / half forward in his first season before eventually coming inside. So, yeah, you're right when you say comparisons at this point are pointless because he's just Harley Reid and he's got all these amazing qualities, this amazing kit bag and skill set. And I spoke to Will Schofield on AFL Tonight last night, and he said in the change rooms after the game, Reid signed every autograph. He was the last player in the change rooms, speaking to the kids and giving everyone their photo and their moment with him. And that, that to me is, that means a lot because I know what that would mean to those kids.
Yeah.
And for him to have the awareness to want to do that as a 19-year-old is pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, the hype's out of control. I mean, I did some work for the AFL media team, so from Sydney, and I was speaking to them the other day, and I'm like, geez, there's a lot of Harley stuff. Like, you guys, every time he has a big game, you must just think, let's pump this stuff out. And the clicks on Harley content, like articles and videos after a big game, are just through the roof. Like, it just dominates the AFL website and all other mediums, I'm sure. And then it was funny, like you just watch these like random articles pop up, like the anatomy of the Fendorf I saw the other day, and I'm like, it's just milking it. And why not? Like, people just want to know more and more and watch more and more. I'm 41 years old almost. I find myself just watching videos like 4 days after the game, like Harley highlights, because it's just simply unprecedented for a 9-game player to be doing what he's doing. Can you imagine what kids, Drewy, 10, 11, 12 years old, are consuming on TikTok and things, places I've got no connection with? Can you imagine the hype reels and videos people are making for 10, 11-year-old, 12-year-old kids to lap up? They would just be utterly obsessed, regardless of who they support. This is just the biggest thing to happen to the AFL playing-wise in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, Reid fits into that generation. So he's the poster boy. He's the pin-up boy for all AFL fans, probably sort of his age and below. And you're right, there's a couple of old-timers here who are happily consuming Reid highlights well after the game. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've started a thread of his highlights.
Yeah, right, okay.
So after every time he has like a big-time moment, I just add it to a thread. So you can start by watching I think it starts with the goal against the Swans, and then you get like some highlights against Richmond, and then it gets into the Derby, and it's all there. So that will probably become quite a long thread, even by the season's end, let alone wherever this goes, if I can keep it rolling. But yeah. So a couple of things on Harley quickly. So the ABC interview that he did, I think on radio, which sort of got converted into a news story, maybe yesterday I saw it pop up about how he was feeling homesick with his birthday and his family birthdays and sort of going back to Tongala. Did it worry you at all? Because from my perspective, it just seems like, well, of course he'd be homesick. He's living away from home for the first time.
It's a good question. So this is actually developed overnight because he was on Talking Footy on Channel 7 and he spoke about it again. The first bit didn't worry me. Let's be honest. It's not an ideal thing for an Eagles fan to read. Like, you don't want him to be saying that. You'd rather him come out and say, I'm loving life here, no dramas. It's all smooth and, happy in Perth and can't see myself leaving. That's what we'd want to hear. But that's unrealistic at this stage for any first-year player. Right, Chris Judd was the same. He was homesick in his first season. He admits it like now, but the microscope was just much smaller then, so those things didn't get publicised as much. And he ended up staying for 6 years. So there's no reason to freak out about it. And then last night on Talking Footy, he came out and he said, I'm not homesick at all. I'm loving Perth, got a good life here. I saw him putting up an Instagram story with his girlfriend out and about in Perth, and I read a couple of comments to the Talking Footy post where he says, I'm not homesick, from people in Perth saying, I actually saw him out on Saturday night. Everyone left him alone. Nobody bothered him. This whole fishbowl thing's being overblown. So it seems fine. There's nothing to really worry about or freak out about yet. I think we all know deep down, Drewy, that there is a chance he could leave. Like any Eagles, I think all Eagles fans have perspective on that and are pretty calm about that and understanding that it could happen. I think we feel there's a good chance he signs a 1-year extension to stay for a 4th year, which would already be great. We could lock away that on probably over $1 million. That's the likelihood right now. But at some stage he could leave. I'm just not really too bothered about it at the moment. I'm just enjoying him playing for us. I'm enjoying the improvement. I'm confident that the club can find a way to lock him down. At the very least, put absolutely everything into it. And if he decides to leave at some stage, well, so be it. But we're going to get the biggest return in AFL trade history if he does. So it's not something to freak out about now. Let's not jump ahead when it comes to a player who's played 9 games and worry about that. Let's enjoy the moment day by day. Good people at the club are monitoring it and trying to lock it all down. It's just not something we need to obsess about. But yes, they were interesting comments that have obviously generated a lot of chat. I'm not too freaked out by it, and I think his comments last night on Channel 7 helped cool things as well. What do you make of it?
No point worrying about whether he's going to leave or not right now. He's 9 games in. He could play as many as between 60 and 70 games in his first contract at West Coast. So we've still got another 50 games ahead of us to look forward to. Like, there's no point worrying about that now. I mean, my view is that he will re-sign at West Coast. Probably a 2-year extension. That's the feel that I get.
That'd be huge. I mean, Judd only stayed for 6. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, and so that would take Harley to 5. And then I don't think it's a big stretch at that point, because we'll have Harley Reid plus a bunch of other good young players plus free agents plus trade. I think we're contending at that time, and then it's not a big stretch for Harley to go, well, maybe I just go to free agency here at least and keep, winning Norm Smiths and flags at West Coast. That's the glass half full perspective on it. So, but that's, again, we're projecting a long way ahead. But I actually think it's a positive that he said what he said to the ABC reporter, because I would rather him say that out loud and acknowledge it than keep it inside. If I don't know anything about psychology, but, I'm, as a 33-year-old, I've gone through personal growth over the last few years, and I have come to understand that emotions that you're feeling inside are valid and real. And if you say them out loud, you feel better about it. If he's acknowledging, actually, I do miss home. I do miss my family. And then I went home and West Coast let me go and see them, and I felt much better. Like, that's a good thing, rather than keeping it inside and not telling anyone. So I think if he acknowledges that, yes, I do miss home, but also I do love Perth and I can still get home and see them, then I think that's, to be honest, that's a positive thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also if he's saying it, then, it's arguably less of an issue. Sometimes when you hide things in life, they're more serious than if you speak about them openly. It's just your thoughts just coming out, but they're not necessarily a situation that is intense. Let's not worry about that. We just want to watch him play against Adelaide this week and enjoy the ride. It's pretty awesome. So I've got a question as we move on from Harley for you, and I was thinking about it this week about Simmo, right? Because he's kind of we're having a very good first half of the season. We've won 3 games. It can go either way. I mean, we could go on a big losing run and he's under massive pressure, or we could win like 3 of our next 7, and all of a sudden it's like, well, Simmo's in the clear. So considering he's got next year to run on his contract, Drewy, you never want to get into that situation where you go into the last year of a coach's contract, right? Because it just creates speculation. It's a cloud hanging over everyone. It creates confusion. It's never an ideal situation for a sporting club to be in. So I just wonder, because I think the overwhelming feeling when Simmo survived last season was he'll see out the storm and they'll bring in a fresh voice when the Eagles are ready to go again. So what do they do if things keep tracking in a positive manner like they are right now? Do they go the 1-year extension? So he's got an extra 2 after this season just to cool everything down. And if things turn pear-shaped, well, it's not a huge payout. They can manage it. Or do they just let it lie and wait and potentially create that cloud over his head? That's one for them, I think, the board to just start to talk about.
Oh, we don't want the cloud, and we don't need uncertainty at the football club. If we're trying to rebuild and Harley Reid is a key centerpiece of that, then I don't feel like speculation over the coach every time we lose is a good thing for the club. So, I think we can all acknowledge that we're playing better right now than we expected for the season. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, without a doubt.
So we have to give the coach credit for that. He's got better availability and some senior players are playing better football, and that just goes hand in hand, obviously, with winning games and improvement on the field. So at the moment, I think Adam Simpson deserves a lot of credit, and I don't think anyone at the club would want that speculation hanging over his head. So it seems like to me it would be something that you deal with at the end of the season, and adding 1 or 2 years onto his tenure would seem like the smart, pragmatic thing to do if this sort of improvement continues. Which, let's be honest, at this point it looks like we're projecting towards winning somewhere between 7 to 9 games. Like we'll probably beat St Kilda and North Melbourne over the next 3 weeks, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But looks like we're capable of winning a fair portion of our home games, and then our away form is going to go up and down. So that's way ahead of where we were in the last couple of years, and probably better than expected this year. When remember, it wasn't that long ago people were saying, "Well, this is just the start of the plan for West Coast. This is a 10-year rebuild." Blah blah blah. Yeah. So we're way ahead of where all the so-called experts believe that we could be. So yeah, the people who were calling for Adam Simpson's head were also projecting us to be bad for 8 years. So I think the extension makes sense to create a stable environment for us to build what we're hoping is going to be a premiership contender.
I think you've also got to monitor who's out there. So, if the board's got to be across coaching options. Like, we're in that situation still. As where does Simmo's going? You've still got to monitor that. Like, he's been there a long time. There's still a feeling that a fresh voice when we're ready to go again may be the best thing moving forward. I think that's a viable talking point. So you've got to monitor who's out there. If there's someone who is a compelling option as a head coach, like Hawthorn felt for Sam Mitchell or McRae or Kingsley or whatever, I think you've got to be across that. And that can also change things. So I think it's an interesting one. For me, it would be no more than a 1-year extension if the trigger was pulled this year, because we can't forget where we were either, and we can't forget how long he's been there. It's just a curious one, but he's doing an excellent job, and I love his calmness at the moment after games. Like when we win, he's not sitting there like, "Oh yeah, I told you all," and big, smug grin on his face or anything. Like, not at all. Like, he's just very calm about it, aware that things can turn very quickly and there's a long way to go. So he's coaching superbly at the minute, and his management of Harley has been excellent as well. He's sticking with the young guys when they're, there's a couple of guys who are lucky to be in the team. Luke Edwards, we know, most notably, better on the weekend, but geez, there's one to go out this week. It's probably him. And, giving the old guys some time to find their form. I think he's doing a nice job at the moment. He really is. So it's going to be an interesting one for the board to deal with, but it's largely a positive situation. So for this week, if Yowie comes back, Drewy, it feels like Luke Edwards out or Dewar out, one of the two. And then, if Yowie comes back, one of them goes to the sub, or maybe Jermaine Jones sub. What do you reckon?
Yeah, look, you're not going to change the winning team too much. I've been intrigued by the Luke Edwards situation. Obviously, he's playing a role and he's getting a run in the team. I don't think it's a bad thing that we're having a look at guys, and Luke hasn't been able to get a really good run at things due to injuries, aside from probably his first sort of 6 to 8 games. So obviously he's doing things that the coaching staff like. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's Jones that goes out and that Edwards stays in the team. That wouldn't be a shock to me. I think Jewel would be the most likely to give him a rest. It would surprise me if Jones went out. I thought he played nicely. Okay.
I don't get the feeling Edwards is playing that well. They're just trying to establish a role for him. Playing in South Australia this weekend probably helps him.
Yes.
I feel both him and Chester is like, just keep them in the team. There's talent there. There's something there. Just let him find it. And they're trying to give him roles. I don't really feel as if he's doing it that well at the moment, apart from maybe keeping someone relatively quiet. But, that's fine. Persisting with him is okay, but he's probably lucky right now. Maybe this is the week he goes out. I think Dewar probably does. I like JJ in the team. I think he should have been in the team a couple of weeks earlier. He just gives us something different, especially with Petrocelli and Long out. Fine. We liked him off half back, but he's filling that small forward role now, creating pressure and creating some opportunities up forward as well.
Yeah, I do. I do like Jones's versatility and that he's got a bit of grunt. That's something that I've always liked about him. I just didn't see that from him earlier in the season. So, but if he can get back to what we've seen from him in the last couple of years, then yes, I think he's a great player to have in your team, whether he's sub or playing small forward, whatever. He can fill various different roles. It's funny that now we're coming up against Adelaide and Yo comes back into the team, and they're, Ryan Daniels is reporting they're offering him, a pretty significant contract. You would hope that, we've spoken about this already. You would hope that he's loyal to West Coast, given that we've stuck by him through all the injuries. But I just love how footy throws up these things that it's like, we're playing Adelaide this week and they're the ones that are chasing him. Like, I'd love for him to come out and have a huge game and, pull the jumper and kick a goal, and that would be fun.
It's an interesting one though. There'll be several clubs going for Yowie, and we'd love him to stay if he plays the way that not so much if he plays the way, because we know how good he is. He'll play that way whenever he's fit. But there is a risk there. Like, if a club's going to pay him massive money, is it the worst thing in the world if we choose not to match it, considering his injury history? Like, someone is taking a punt. Like, he's just missed 2 weeks with the groin. He's missed a lot of footy with these injuries. Like, it wouldn't surprise, and touch wood, it doesn't happen. But if he has these issues with his groin and that for the rest of his career and calves and so on, like, there is that risk, right? So I want Elliot Yeo to stay. Don't get me wrong. He's probably still our best player and one of our best ever. But if someone pays massive money, I'm not devastated if we don't match it because of his injury record. There is risk there.
No, I agree. Yeah, he's had a good start to the season, but it's hard to, like, I can't totally forget what it's been like for the last 3 years.
Yeah,
and we don't need, like, we're supposed to be rebuilding. We don't need to commit a huge amount of our salary cap to an older injury-prone player. So I think a middle ground is probably going to be found, but West Coast should be wary about overpaying Yo. And I would say they'd be hoping to sort of slant more towards like appearance fees and match fees being higher with a lower base. That would sort of make sense. It's easy for Adelaide to throw around this money from the outside, and also they're trying to attract him to the club. But it's a big move for Yo to go to Adelaide and to restart a chapter of his life when I'm sure his preference would be to stay. So anyway, we'll see how. I mean, I would like if he comes out and shows he's free of that injury and is back to how he was playing a few weeks ago. I'll probably feel better about the whole thing. I hope that he doesn't go down this injury spiral again. Do you think we're last year we lost this game by 20 goals? Do you think we're a genuine shout to win?
Reasonable, not genuine. Rankin out's huge for the Crows, or huge for us. Huge absence for the Crows. I mean, he is their difference maker. Yo back helps. We know the backline's playing really well. We know we've got a pretty good record at Adelaide Oval over the journey, despite the disaster of last season and maybe a few other recent ones. So I think we're a chance to give them a scare. I can't see us winning away. Crows are playing pretty good footy at the moment, but I wouldn't think we'd be a chance last week, and look what happened. So, yep, I think we'll be in it, hopefully, and just looking forward to it, mate. What a way to end the weekend on a Sunday night, hopefully with a really strong performance away to the Crows at the Adelaide Oval. Come on, the Eagles.
Yeah, I think we're a genuine shout, but our away form is much different to our home form. So I'll go in hopeful, but I won't go in expecting a victory. But, when Jake the Snake kicks 14 and takes the outright lead in the column by 10, then, we'll look back on this and say, geez, we were silly to ever doubt us.
Thanks, Drewy. Go on, Eagles.